There came a day when one of these last escaped from the cell where she was shut up. I saw her. That was the beginning of my good or bad fortune, according, sir, to how you treat me henceforth. I have never seen anything so horrible. She was all dishevelled and half-naked. She was dragging iron chains, wild-eyed, tearing her hair and beating her breast, running along and shrieking. She was heaping upon herself and everyone else the most appalling curses, and looking for a window to throw herself out of. I was seized with panic, and trembled in every limb, seeing my own fate in that unhappy creature, and thereupon a vow was made in my heart that I would die 1,000 deaths rather than expose myself to it. They realised the effect this event might have on my mind, and that it must be forestalled, so I was told all manner of ridiculous and contradictory lies about this nun, such as that her mind was already deranged when she was admitted, that she had had a terrible shock at a critical stage of her development, she was given to seeing visions, she thought she was in communication with the angels, she had read some pernicious books which had turned her brain. She had listened to the inventors of a new and outlandish moral code, who had made her so terrified of the judgment of God that her already weakened mind had given way. She now saw nothing but demons, hell, and fire abysses, and they were most unfortunate, for it was unheard of that there had been anybody like that in this house before, and heaven knows what else besides. It didn't work on me. My demented nun constantly haunted my mind, and I constantly swore to myself that I would never take any vow. Soon the moment had come for showing whether I could keep the promise I had made to myself. One morning after service the superior came to see me. She had a letter in her hand, her face expressed misery and grief, her arms hung loose, and it seemed as though her hand couldn't find the strength to hold up the letter. As she looked at me, tears seemed to flow from her eyes. She said not a word, and neither did I. She was waiting for me to speak first, but I resisted the temptation. So she asked me how I was, saying that office had been very long that day. I had coughed a bit, and she thought I might not be feeling well. All this I answered with, "No, dear mother." She still held the letter in a drooping hand, but in the middle of these questions she put it down upon her lap, partially concealed by her hand. At length, having skirted round the subject by asking various questions about my father and mother, she realised that I was not going to ask her what the paper was, and so she said, "Here is a letter." This made my heart miss a beat, and it was with the faltering voice and trembling lips that I completed the sentence, "From my mother?" "As you say. Here you are. Read it." I recovered a little, took the letter, which at first I read fairly steadily, but as I went on, fear, indignation, anger, vexation, one passion after another poisoned me, and I had different voices, took on different expressions, and made different gestures. At one moment I could scarcely hold the paper, at another I gripped it as if to tear it into pieces, or grasp it fiercely, as though wanting to screw it up and throw it away. "Well, child, how are we going to answer that?" "You know quite well, madame." "Oh, no, I don't. Times are hard. Your family had suffered financial losses. Your sister's affairs are in a bad state, and they both have large families. Your parents made crippling sacrifices for them when they were married, and are now facing ruin to help them. It is impossible for them to establish you. They have worked out their budget on the supposition that you have taken the habit, and your action has given rise to hopes. News that your final vows are imminent has been noised abroad. Of course, you can always count on all my help. I have never tried to entice anybody into the religious life. It is a state into which God calls us, and it is very dangerous to bandy arguments with him. I shall not undertake to speak to your heart if the grace of God has no message for it. So far, I cannot lay the blame on myself for the unhappiness of any other woman. Would I wish to begin with you, my child, who are so dear to me? I am well aware that you took the first steps because I persuaded you, and I will not let that fact be abused in order to involve you in anything you do not wish. So let us just think about it together and come to a decision. Do you want to make your vows?" "No, madame." "The religious life has no attraction for you?" "No, madame." "You won't obey your parents?" "No, madame." "Then what do you want to be?" Anything rather than a nun. I don't want to be a nun, and I won't. Very well, you won't. Well now, we must think out an answer to your mother. We agreed on a few ideas. She wrote the letter and showed it to me, and once again I thought it was quite good. But the director of the house was sent to me, likewise the theologian who had made the exhortation when I took the novice's habit. I was put into touch with the novice mistress. I saw the Bishop of Aleppo. I had to argue with certain pious women who concerned themselves with my business without knowing who they were. There were continual discussions with monks and priests. My father came, my sisters wrote, and last of all, my mother appeared. I resisted them all. Meanwhile, the day for my final vows was fixed. No efforts were spared to obtain my consent, but when they realised it was useless to try and get it, they decided to do without.